The reason why you don't understand your intuitive intelligence and your intuitive nature is because we have been told and taught not to listen to it. We operate in society in our logical mind in the left side of the brain. We have the right side that's creative, that's intuitive, that's imaginative, and we only leverage those pieces every so often, and then we bring them back into the logical mind. The logical mind is also where the ego sits. It's where your inner critic sits. It's where everything that tells you that you're not worthy, you're not good enough, you can't do the thing sits. It's also where we have to have evidence for everything in life and make sure that we can't do anything or move. It's the smallest area in the mind that holds us back from everything else. All religions have told us and taught us that anything below the neck is really not something we should be looking at, thinking about, or understanding. And actually, I would go even a little bit further, where you even need to watch what you say. You need to be kind, you need to be polite, which of course there's social norms and you want to have that, but there's also this level of you need to make sure that you're prim and proper. And if we don't like what you say, we will cancel you. And that has always been the way society has rolled. But we also fight against this idea that we want to be free, we want to be self-sovereign, we want to have all of this newfound freedom in life, and yet we struggle and wrestle within ourselves because of the programming. So we have a third eye, we have an intuition, we have everything below the neck, which is how we speak, the tone of voice that we have, our heart, our stomach, our sacral, our roots, everything within the energetic system. We have really no clue how that works. Not at all. We're just starting to understand, and we have to rely on ancient techniques and technology, ancient techniques that we bring in that we can start to leverage, but they get watered down into the spiritualness of this industry. And so it's really difficult to understand what is and how to test that. It is really difficult to test intuition because it has to go off of a lot of very minutia. And it's something that if you really knew how to leverage, you would be a very free human being. You are intuitive, and I know you're intuitive. I don't think you'd be here if you weren't intuitive. I think that you just don't, you might not know how to take that and do something with it. You might not be able to know how to act on those impulses that you have. So it's really important that we go in through this discussion and start having this conversation about what things mean. Intuition, by definition, is a knowing without knowing. It's a knowingness of something that's about to happen before you know it's going to happen. And a lot of times we get tangled up in feelings, and we think that those feelings are also intuition. We say things like gut instinct, and we call that intuition. That's really not the case. We have an internal guidance system that makes us, helps us maneuver through the world. It is the most epic piece that we have as humans. That is our humanness, to be able to understand the difference between what we feel, how we think, how we need to maneuver. This is why it's important for us to be close in nature. And when we dumb that down, when we say that those things don't matter for us, we push them away. So if you have a feeling of frustration, of anger, of an emotion, which has a meaning, it's a message that needs to be brought to life, you take it and then you discard and you transmute that energy, and then you push it off to the side. Or you do something with that energy, not push it off to the side. You take that energy because you've understood why you're frustrated, why you feel these ways, and you do something with it. A lot of times we will feel frustrated. We will feel things that we don't really understand what they are about. And our logical mind will override it. It will tell us that you need to get back to work. You need to grit and grind through it. And there's a time and place for that. But over a long period of time, you have to understand and realize that that is telling you something. That is when we don't listen to our body. And so we have all of these centers and this energy that runs through us, and we don't really know how to decipher what's what. It's really difficult for us. And we've been starting to embark on emotional intelligence, which is a key word, which is a buzz phrase that is going on. But I feel like the way we're going about it in society is that we still don't really understand emotions. And not that we don't understand emotions, but like how to handle them, how to really be articulate about them. Or we developed a culture where in order for you to feel like you have an emotional intelligence, it's just you being able to kind of vomit your emotions out into the world, out into being social. The way society has us maneuvering with emotional intelligence is that we are moving through and almost word vomiting how we feel without any repercussions, or feeling like we have some sort of privilege or right to be able to just air out all of these things as if that somehow is a liberal or liberated way that we move about, not to get into any sort of politics whatsoever. I just want to have a vocabulary, a conversation, a dialogue that we can move through so that we understand when we feel this way, we can interpret it for ourselves, and we know what the message is for ourselves. We know how to discern for ourselves. We are the guru for ourselves. We are in conjunction with our own spirit, with our own higher self, with our own energy, and we can figure out how to maneuver through so that we're not held back to the things that we want to do. We want to move forward. And this has taken me a very long time, and there's just levers to this because we get conditioned. We get conditioned by society. It's no one's fault, really. And until we start breaking some of these barriers down, which we are doing, we're not going to really do the things that we want. And I also think this is such important work right now in general. And there's a lot of people doing this type of work, because we're deconstructing society. We're deconstructing the old paradigms of religion. We're looking at how we want to live. And there's high levels of anxiety. There's high levels of fear. There's a lot of ways in which people are distracted and they don't really know how to go back into themselves. If I were to ask you if you were spiritual, you would probably tell me you were. And if I would ask you, what does that look like? You might pause a little bit. You might do things here or there. You might tell me that you kind of meditate, but it's really difficult because we're in our logical brain all of the time. So when you're running through your tasks, your errands, the things that you have to get done, that's your logical mind constantly going, because that's how we've trained it. We override it, or we let that override us and our feelings. So we have these things going on in our lives, and we don't know how to quiet down and neutralize what's going on so that we can start to get that intuition. So let's go back into why intuition is so important and why you may not feel like you aren't connected. Or you may not see, you know you're intuitive, but it's that intuitive intelligence on how to take that information and then actually do something with it. So it's the highest level of a human consciousness. It's what Hinduism, the first religion ever created, coined as like, that is the ultimate human, when they are in tune with themselves in their intuition. So you have your conscious, you have your subconscious, and there's unconscious when you're asleep, but then you have your superconscious. You have this supernatural element to you because you are of nature. And when you can open up that channel into the divine, which is really just all of the energies in the world, in the cosmos that you can tap into and hear from. And there's a lot of energies out there. There's a lot of entities. There's a lot of good and bad. You have to really understand what is it that you're connecting to. You become the channel. You don't need a medium. You don't need anyone else to help you. You could channel in the information that you need for yourself to course correct and direct you in the places that you need to go. But no one teaches that. It's really hard to teach because we all grow up in different ways, but then we also sort of grow up in the same way. We also have kind of similar traumas. Our parents didn't know how to do any of this. Their parents didn't know how to do any of this. Everybody has been in survival mode probably for the last thousands of years, 5, 6, 7,000 years since the beginning of time. It's only been in the last 50, 60 years, but even still, with modern society, with the conveniences that we have, we're still in some type of survival mode. We haven't quite edged that out, and we're building societies where it's really kind of stacked against us. We create the good and we create the evil, which is the hardest truth ever to really fathom. You can see animals. I live close to nature. Animals don't have to pay to eat. They eat off the land. Yet if you don't have any money, you'll starve. It's a really tough way to live. It's a really, really tough way to live. So you have emotions in your body. You have thoughts. You have feelings, you have knowings, you have nudgings, And sometimes they conflict, and sometimes it's really difficult to know what's what. So how do you start to break down that intuitive knowledge? And the first thing that I'm going to suggest, in the years that I've worked on it for myself, specifically in business, specifically in my design career, and then also personally and over time in self-development, because a lot of that was shut down, but it was really great working. It was really, really good at working, was to be able to neutralize and get really calm. Because the one thing that I've learned about intuition and a knowing is that there's no emotion attached to it. There's no charge attached to it. It is a wave frequency that comes in, which means that if there's something brewing in the air, if there's some sort of frequency, meaning there's something that's already started happening. It's like a collective consciousness. We're like the 1.0 version of Wi-Fi. We send signals out. So every thought you have is actually a wave of frequency that sends out into the universe, that sends out. So when you're able to pick up and think about somebody, and then they call you, it's because they had you on their mind. So you were able to pick that up. So when we get this knowingness without having any evidence of it in our reality, it's because it's coming towards us. This is also how, well, it's slightly different, but this is also how animals will feel earthquakes coming. They'll start to feel the vibrations of the earth shake way before the actual shaking happens, and it is in the reality, and it's in this level of existence and evidence. So when you get intuitive downloads or information coming towards you, there's things that are happening. So here's the tricky part. We sometimes will get information and we don't know what to do with it. It might be overwhelming to us. Or if we are used to getting that information, we'll take that information and we might apply expectations on it. We might apply a story to it. So now we start to convert the information that we're getting. And that can be a little dangerous. We definitely want to stay in observation mode, and we want to maybe document down. I have a journal that I created to help document this process for you, link below. And it's an intuitive journal that just helps you really look at these pieces, because I've noticed that over time, when someone significant was coming into my life or something was happening, I would just get these little pieces that would just be repetitive patterns, repetitive patterns, repetitive patterns. Start to see things over and over again. Why am I getting, this type of car, this type of name, this type of like this past person coming in? This is like reminders of things kind of stitched together. And it's only after the fact that it showed up in the reality that I was able to understand what was going to come, or what this meant. And so we have to get to this place where I wasn't electrically charged with an emotion. I was really at peace. I was calm. Things just dropped in. I've recommended this in the past in my newsletters, that some of this comes through, or just even sparks of idea in creativity, because creativity and intuition are very, very closely aligned. And I always like to recommend doing creative projects so that you can kind of get some of this insight and sharpen that muscle for yourself. A lot of times it's the monotonous, repetitive things that we do. Washing the dishes, doing laundry, going for a drive. We're engaged. We're physically engaged. Our logical mind has something to do. Right? You have to pay attention to when you're driving, you're paying attention when you're washing the dishes, but it lets the right brain open up. And it has the freedom where you're not really running any stories in your head if you're calm and peaceful, and things can drop in. Moments can drop in, or you've been thinking about something and you've been trying to solve a problem and you put it on the back burner and it just starts to like ruminate and it drops in. And so we start to look at, that's really the kind of the level of intuition. And there are levels of intuition as well, which we'll get into in another video. I think that's a lot for this one. How do we start looking at the emotions? How do we start looking at the heart center? How do we start looking at when I get pulled, and what does that mean? Because there's sometimes people, we're going to read things differently. You might not get any visuals whatsoever, but you just have a feeling, and it's not even like a charged feeling. It's more of just like, there's a difference in the knowing of a feeling. Like it's a deeper resonance in the soul of like, this is going to happen. This is coming. And then there's a cascade of emotions that might come with that. If you know something is, threatening a loved one, you might do something like that's a premonition. That's almost getting to like a higher psychic level. There might be things that happen when you're in work engagements, business encounters, right? And then you have a lower level feeling like your gut. Your gut is going to give you instinct. So in that case, you're looking at any sort of feeling that makes you feel triggered, that makes you feel on guard. I used to get little knives jabbed in my stomach if I was anticipating a call that I knew wasn't going to be good, right? I literally was put on guard to make sure that I was in a proper place, proper border, proper, what's the word I'm looking for? Boundaries, proper boundaries to put in place. Right before the phone call happened, right as the phone was ringing, I'm anticipating what's going to be a threat, what's not going to be a threat. I need to be on guard. This is in survival mode. So anything that's in the gut instinct, this is telling you, is this going to threaten what I'm doing or not going to threaten what I'm doing? And so we have these layers that we want to work through, because what typically happens with us is that we're very intuitive creatures. We get these feelings, we get these knowings, we get these understandings, and then they go right into the logical mind. And the logical mind wants to write and wrap a story around that and tell you that that doesn't mean anything. Or they're going to, your inner critic, your ego, it's going to hijack it and say, don't worry about it. Keep going. It didn't mean anything. You're overanalyzing it. It might shift you in a direction and you keep staying in that perpetual cycle, which is ironic because it's also the voice that's going to tell you to hold back and stay in fear. It kind of grips you. You could also look at this from a spiritual sense. So like this is kind of that devil on your shoulder as opposed to the angel on your shoulder, which is on the right side. And trying to figure out the difference between those two main voices and then just kind of the octaves of everything that goes inside of your mind. It's anytime you get an intuitive hit, it's always going to tell you to go in a direction that's best for you. That's how you know it's really intuition or some sort of intuitive intellect. I think intuition, we just seem to like batter these words so that they don't hold the kind of meaning that they should. And we kind of put this in this woo-woo camp, when really everything within you and how you read people, body language, understanding how you move through the world, that is like 65-75% of how you live. How is that woo-woo? The logical mind needs evidence. By the time you get evidence, it's already from the past. The way that we look at science, the way that we look at anything creative, anything for the marketplace, you can use all the data and analysis that you want. That's great when you want to do iterations on things, but that's not where innovation happens. Innovation happens when we're looking at the future and trying to see how can we find problems that haven't hit yet. What's coming up ahead? How can we help solve things that we think could be an issue? Your logical mind will also tell you to do things like hurt yourself. And if you play in your logical mind only, and you have to have this very systematic, proven, it's very patriarchal, everything has to have a result and a reason, you might actually believe it. You might think, maybe I am not good enough. Maybe I don't know what I'm doing here. Maybe I don't belong here. Maybe I don't have value. Like all these nonsensical things. But that's really just the exact opposite of who you are as a human, why you're here. We don't have to get into any existential purpose of why, but the fact that that voice has so much power, I would just take a step back and really evaluate when those lines come in, that voice comes in, that self-doubt comes in. Who are you really, really listening to? What voice are you really giving power to? And when you do have that intuitive hit and it's like, hey, you might need to get out of this relationship. You might need to change your job, move. You might need to make some major changes in your life because it's not working for you. It doesn't feel good in your body. You might be getting those notions before you get sick, before some disease happens. And it's really important that you listen to that, because most successful people know how to balance the two together. It's not one or the other. It's never one or the other. You utilize all of the tools. And that's really the point of this work, is to really understand that there is this super intellect that we have that we've been shut down. And the reason it gets shut down is because if you really understood it, you would be free. You would be free to move about. You'd be free to create the life that you want. And you'd also be able to detect when someone was trying to pull something on you. You would be able to really see the intentions of other people when they're trying to manipulate you. There'd be no other way around it. You'd be able to identify exactly. It's a super skill. I see this I like to listen to a lot of CIA agents and people that are in these like high, spy agents for the world. And there's always this high level of human behavior and psychology. We operate in a certain way. If you're half asleep, you operate in a certain way. It's really easy. Once you understand these things, it's really easy to see what's what. And that sharpness of instinct, intuitive intellect, anticipating what's happening, anticipating when people, we live in cycles. We have patterns to us. We've studied this. And knowing this and honing on this and teaching this in a way where we're all in a knowing of what's what is a very, very dangerous skill, because then no one can pull anything on you. And I think we're getting into a place now where we're really crumbling a lot of pieces in society. A lot of pieces in society. Structures, old paradigms. And we're not going to be left with much. We're going to have to sort and sift through the rubble that we start to decompose with all of the structures. And we're going to have to figure out what is it that we want to take? What is it that we want to take with us, move with us, and build this new world? And if we don't understand ourselves, who we are, what we need, how we need it, how to self-care, how to hold ourselves, how to be responsible, accountable just for ourselves, we're going to have a really hard time trying to figure out what is the world that we want to shape, because we're going to be that generation, that next era, multiple generations that are going to say, this is the brick we want to take and put over here to build the foundation. This tradition makes sense. We want to hold it. And this doesn't. This new thing, maybe not so much. And so it's really, really important that we understand ourselves, that we operate through our own higher intellect to build a world that resonates at a higher frequency for us. Like, why else are we here? You're having your own experience for yourself. You're doing things for yourself. And the better you treat yourself, the better you're going to treat other people. It has a ripple effect. If you talk down to yourself, if you belittle yourself, if you deny yourself, it's really easy for you to do that with other people. And you may not even realize you're doing it. It's really easy to shoo things away, not give it its importance because you're not giving it to yourself. What difference does it make? It's how do we put the value on ourselves? So the value is the self-development, the self-care, and connecting into that intuition so that you become the channel that you are. You have every access to something much greater to create whatever you need. So think about how it is that you move through. Think about how you really look at intuition as this superpower that you have to help pull in the things that you want for yourself. It's also really great with manifestation, which is another topic we can get into. Love to hear your comments below, any notes that you wanted to take, anything you want to add as well. And let's start having a better dialogue, a better way that we can talk about the specifics, getting into emotions, understanding what that means when we have these sorts of things. What message is it trying to say to us? This would be a very general type of conversation because all of us are different. We're going to have different standards, different context around the situations that we have that you would have to decipher for yourself. So it's really looking at the principles of what is that intellectual intuitiveness that we want to add into. This works with your personal relationships, the relationship with yourself, your business relationships, everything that you need to do to get you to just keep growing, to keep evolving, to keep moving, and to keep making just the space around you pleasurable, the space around you, the kind of life you want to have, the kind of environment you want to be in. because you're seeing it through the right lens. And the right lens is at this full capacity, this full perspective between not just your logical mind and this very empirical needing to have results and evidence. And if we don't have those results and evidence, then that means it's not working, and that's not true. If I were to ask you, how could you prove that there's love in the world or that you love somebody? You would be really hard pressed to do that. You'd give me examples, but if I asked someone else to give me different examples, and there would be no concrete evidence to say this specific thing right here, in fact, shows that we're in love or that we're a loving person. You can look at heat maps and you can see certain things, but they also match others as well. And it's only through the way that we feel and have that emotion, but it's not something we can see. Not yet. So I wish you the best. I hope that this conversation was helpful in thinking about how you start opening up your intellect, your intelligence around your intuition. And I look forward to seeing you in the next one. Take care. Bye.